Right, so real quickly, I just wanted to go over a few other elements of the change in the EMR that will be new for us. A big one is telephone calls. Currently, we just have that blank telephone call template, looks similar to the miscellaneous note template, which are both gone now. Using the out-of-the-box telephone call makes things, it kind of lays out the communication a little bit clearer. We're currently using, Mixi, Outlook, email, phone calls whenever a patient calls. A good example would be, triage nurse gets a voicemail from a patient. They want an antibiotic. They call Clay. Clay, is in with the patient. Then they email Clay. Clay looks the patient up. He replies with his answer, and then they call the patient. So a lot of that can get lost in translation, and this makes it so that it's impossible to get lost in translation. The whole process of the telephone call note works by tasking things back and forth. It's hard for me to kind of show because I can only task things to I can't really task things around because I can't get into anyone else's inbox, but you basically choose your communication. For any of our what would previously have been miscellaneous would go in the other. They all look the same. It's more just how it's written in the note, or pulled into the document rather. So this is kind of what it looks like. This side is more just for, just kind of, we'll see how they like it with the flow, but it's more for the people within the communication to keep track of where they are. It's over here is where all the documentation occurs. So, the call type, who they talk to, you can go to the HIPAA template and see if you can talk to them. This links to the HIPAA template. So, if you can even talk to them about it, what the communication was regarding, and then what it was about. We can save tons of my phrases in here. This is where you can also review some tests, whatever you'd like to kind of document on, whatever would have previously been documented in the telephone call note. You add it down here and it gets into this grid, and then you would task it off. So you would send and close it. A lot of times it's a nurse sending it to Clay, Clay sending it back. Another example would be you call a patient to discuss surgery. You write that in here. You task that to an assistant. They open it up. They write you need an order. They open that up. They do the order, and then they task the order to the front. When you generate the note at the end of that exchange, it's clearly laid out who touched what piece of this communication, and it kind of covers our bases a little bit more and makes it almost impossible for you not to document a telephone call of any kind, because a lot of times things have to be tasked and you can't task it without typing it. We'd like to use the tasking feature a lot more. We don't currently use it a whole lot except for orders, and we will be using it more, and this is where the clinical tasking comes in. What they say at NextGen is that people kind of learn to live in their inbox. You can get to your PAQ from here, see your appointments, and if anyone is ever tasking anything new, maybe to sign off on some, sign off on notes that it can be sent, review say that we get in a lab result that doesn't look right or something, we can task it to you to look over. It does kind of eliminate a little bit of our interpersonal communications here, but it does make it so that we're really compliant in using patient documentation and just keeping that within the EMR. You can also task things to yourself. So if I send a records request, I could task it to myself to follow and make sure that I did it and make sure that we got it back. So that's a new feature it's not a new feature, but it's what we would be using moving forward. The order management, I mentioned it previously. This is where it houses all of the previous orders, and hopefully in the future it would kind of have the interpretation or the report, which is a little bit different than what we do now. We're currently still using a running Excel spreadsheet, and this template is almost the equivalent of that, just within the EMR. I didn't mention this with the tasking either. If you task something and you open it, it'll open you right into their chart and also right into where they left off in the chart. So also pretty efficient getting in there. And the telephone call can be accessed pretty quickly. It's right up here in this patient information bar, right here rather. The send email we don't really use because we use encrypted email. The only other thing that you may be curious about is audiology. That didn't change a whole lot because our custom templates were almost identical to the out-of-the-box ones, but they did have quite a bit of information missing from them. So going back to the out-of-the-box does allow for more documentation for audiology, which has been requested. You can over or under document as much as you'd like. Obviously, we prefer for the highest level of documentation, but there won't be much change there, and really shouldn't require. It won't be too big of a change for them. But just so you're curious, just in case you were curious, for example, you know, for what would like appear in your note. See, this looks. You've probably never been in here, but this does look pretty much the exact same as what they have now. It has more on it. Obviously, we don't do Epley, but you kind of learn to just ignore. But like what would pull into your note is you can write out all of these levels, which is we'll document it a little bit more clearer as well, more than just an interpretation, which is required of them. So it'll allow us to document a little bit more accurately into a higher level for audiology within the clinic. So the biggest changes in general within the system is telephone call, sending orders or billing through or like the orders for injections. We're also going to treat the injections as orders. We don't currently do it that way. We consider them more of a verbal order, but if we do them an official order, then we can bill from that template. Physical exam, the only reason it changes is because they're just new to your eyes, but they work the same way. Procedures, you know, a lot of them do change, but most of the ones that we use regularly don't. And they bill from them, which is one of the greatest positives. The finalized template is new. Obviously, the intake note is new, but we do all the intake note. We do all of the mechanisms in the intake note now currently, but we do it on a cheat sheet. So we do it twice, if not 3 times. I'm hearing what the patient's saying. I'm thinking about what the patient's saying. I'm writing it down. I dictate it to you. The scribe, a lot of times now, will listen to what that conversation's about and type. And then later we'll go back and read what's written on the note, then type it. That whole process is done once. Twice if you want to add to it in the room. So that's kind of where a lot of the benefits for that intake note or that process in general is. And that's going to conclude the demo. I think I covered pretty much everything for the upgraded EMR.